Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Thanks for clicking on the video. Any of you who know me know that I like an alcohol stove for my cooking and boiling of water. So I've got a few. I have the Trangia and a few homemade ones. My current favourite being the Fancy Feast, as they call it in America, which is a tuna tin can with a sweet corn tin inside it and some insulation felt, which I love. And I've also got a penny stove that I made, and a stove that I made out of a shoe polish tin. But today I'm going to attempt to make a stove from a Starbucks double shot espresso tin. So stay tuned, and I hope you like the video. Okay, so to make this stove from this tin, I'm going to need a pen, a drill. I've got a 1.5mm drill bit. This is going to be a test bed. It may or may not work, but we shall see. So I thought I'd film it. Tape measure, some tape just to mark it off, and a ridiculously oversized hacksaw, because I haven't got one any smaller at the moment. So fingers crossed it works. Okay, so first off I'm going to have to mark how high I want the stove to be. It's only a rough guess, it doesn't have to be anything particular. So ideally choose something that is of a particular height, such as my tool drill case here. And I'm going to line this up with roughly where I want it to be. I think about here should suit, and then just spin that round. So we have a perfect circle going around it. So the next thing to do is to mask this circle off with some tape, and then I'm going to use that tape to mark where I want the holes to be for the vents for the alcohol and the flames to come from. So I'll do that now. Okay, this is basically to measure the diameter of it so we can equally space the vents. So I'm just going to put a mark here and then level that up with another mark on top. So now when I take this off, I can measure that and then space the vents equally between them so that it works out perfect going around the actual stove. Okay, so you might not see it from that side, but this is just over 16 centimeters in circumference. So I will put a mark at the 8 point, and then we're going to go around it. I think every centimetre with a jet vent. So let's mark these along here now. Okay. So this is the jets. They are marked now, so that they'll be perfectly or roughly equally spaced all the way around. Now we've attached that back onto the tin, and then we can use that as a guide for drilling the holes. Okay, so there's the tape. This is where I'm going to have my vent holes along here. I'm going to drill through these now so that they're all equally spaced, and we hopefully get a nice jet coming out. Tip for this is to put them in there first, put the vent holes in before you actually cut the can itself, because it's a really solid can. Once you cut through there, start to drill into it, it's going to push and damage this can. Okay, so that's all the holes drilled. Now if you want to make this look really fancy, you can spend a bit of time taking all the colour off, so it's nice and silvery and aluminium, but I really can't be bothered. It's a lot of work. Okay, so the next step now is to cut the hacksaw across this section here, but also we want to measure the height of the tin where the mark is. So this is at 5 centimeters. We then need to cut down from the top, because this top is going to invert and go inside here. It needs to be shorter because it's got to drop down below this line, and it's got to be seated at the bottom here, which does come up a bit as well, so there is a bit of a recess. So we need to make that shorter, so I'm going to take that down by at least 1 centimeter. Okay, so gone back to the drawing board a little bit. This is my second go at it. It didn't really work that well, so I didn't get the measurements correct. So what I've done is I've gone a bit higher on the base, and I've drilled the holes lower. The first one, when I put the top section inside it, the actual curve here covered a lot of the holes, so I needed it to be longer. And also it's been a lot easier to cut it with scissors, so I'll use scissors this time to cut it. And I'll drill a pilot hole first off and then just cut around and hopefully get a nice smooth edge. Go through the table. Okay. Just cut that bit off. Yeah, once the main part is off, it's much easier to cut. You can get further down on the scissors to do it. So there you go. It's going to form the base of the stove, the main body. Just tidy up a few of the edges. And that's pretty much it. I'll just I'll smooth the edges down a bit. Now to cut the top section off, which will then fit inside here, and I'll trim that so it's nice and flush. And then that will be pretty much the stove done. Now, before I do, while it's there, I'm just going to cut a groove. So I'm going to cut basically a V-shaped groove on 4 sides here. This is to allow the fuel, when you put the fuel in, to seep out and come up the sides and be able to ignite from the actual stove itself. So I'm just going to put one on one side. There you go. That's those 4 done. Now I just need to cut. Okay, so now this is virtually identical height, as you can see there, to that. And the inside of this is raised a little bit, so it'll have to be trimmed down a little bit. So I'm going to take a little bit off of here first off before I put it inside, just to help it fit a bit better. I'm also just going to take the file and just take off any rough edges inside from the drill I've got. So okay, that's the base bit done. Now I'm just going to take a little bit more off of this, just to help it to seat a little bit better. Only a small amount. Okay, so that's it seated inside now. That's flush with the bottom. You can see the 4 cut-out holes that I've got for the alcohol to go into and fill up the sides. So when this heats up, This will start to bubble and the meths will gasify, come out of here and light, and that's what the stove will become. Right, let's just trim this edge down. Okay, so that's it all seated in, trimmed off nicely, so it's not really sharp, it's not going to cut my fingers. I'm just going around the holes just to make sure that they're all nicely clear, because there's a couple of little burrs of metal that's just inside there. I'll make sure that the jets come out nice and clean. Okay, now for the moment of truth. Okay, so I'm just going to put 2 fluid ounces in this one just to compare and see how long it lasts, how quick it boils, and I'll do the same with the Cat Can Fancy Feast stove. Okay, I'm going to start this now. This does take a little while to bloom properly, probably about a minute or so. So I'll just let that bloom, and then we'll start the boil. Okay, so it's taking just over a minute to boil, a minute and 10 seconds. Sorry, to bloom. Put the fan on. So that's gone on at 1 minute 25 seconds, and we'll see how long that takes to get to a rolling boil. Okay, so that's come to a boil now. It's a rolling boil. There's it's half a litre of water in there, and that came to boil in 5 minutes and 20 seconds, but 1 minute 25 of that was bloom time. So realistically about 4 minutes, or just under 3 minutes 50. I'm going to leave this going, see how long it runs for before it runs out of fuel. Okay, so it's just starting to run down now. Still be okay for keeping water simmering or boiling, and that's that. Okay, so we had a total burn time of 8 minutes and 35 seconds. So that's including about a minute and a half of bloom, and the boil time was about 3 minutes 50 seconds once the pot was on. So call it 5 minutes to boil it in total. An interesting comparison. So that is from the Starbucks Intenso Espresso tin. Okay, so being a lover of my tuna tin, sweet corn tin stove that I made, it's quite bulky. It's quite a big stove, and it's only so it fits properly inside my little kit. It does fit in there, but it's a bit of a squeeze. So making the Starbucks stove, I thought I would have a go of a version of that tuna tin stove, but smaller. So the Cat Can stove, whatever you want to call it. So I have basically taken another Starbucks espresso shot tin bottle, cut it similarly to the previous stove that I did just now. I made little cutouts in it, and I've folded them out so that it can grip the actual insulation inside the side of it. And then I've got a smaller tuna tin stove, which is a Tesco one, which is a lot smaller than my normal tuna tin stove that I have, and give that a go. Make that with some fiberglass or roof insulation, loft insulation, whatever you want to call it, and then do a test on that, see how it compares against the larger one, because this is much lighter, much smaller, more packable, so it'll be interesting to see how it works. So as I said, I've cut the espresso tin down to a size that I think will work for the height to boil the water efficiently. And I've just put these little cutouts on the edge for the fuel to come out and soak up through the wick. But I need to put some holes at the top here so that any gas can vent out, so you don't get a build-up of fumes underneath here, which when you take the pot off, can suddenly ignite. So I'm just going to drill a couple of holes in there to let that out. Okay, those two should do it. So now I'm going to put the loft insulation. I'm just going to try and wrap this around the outside of it. It can be fairly thin. It seems to last quite a long time. I've had it on my other one for ages and it works quite well. So just enough to tuck around the edges. Add a bit more if you need. It sticks together quite well. So it's a matter of getting it around the stove, and then the difficult bit is cramming it inside the actual tuna tin can as well. Just going to poke it down the edges so that it's nicely covered inside. Okay, that's looking good. So you see the inside of the stove there, there's 4 ports at the bottom for the fuel to go out and go into the wick, and then around the edge you can see the actual wick which we will pour the fuel into and light. So I'm going to do the same test as I did on the previous stove. I'm going to pour the same amount of fuel in and let it bloom, and then boil the same amount of water as we did before, half a litre, see how long it takes. Okay, so I've got 2 fluid ounces going in. I normally prime a bit around the edges, but haven't really got much there to do it with. That will soak up anyway. So 2 fluid ounces is about 50 millilitres of fuel, and this is just methylated spirits. And right, I'll put some water on, see how long that takes. And the inside of it as well. Let's help it on its way. Okay, it's going nicely. Right, stopwatch going, and we'll see how long that takes. So I'll test to see how long it boils. Half a litre of water, so it's just over 2 cups in American terms, and then see how long the boil time is, just to see how much more it would do. Okay, so that's come to a rolling boil at around 6 minutes and 18 seconds, so a bit longer. But I'm going to leave it going, see how long that burns for now. Okay, so that's just starting to go out now. Still burning, but I think I'll call that it at just around 13 minutes, 12 minutes, 55 seconds. So pretty much exactly the same as the tuna tin stove, or the fancy feast as they call it. The boil time was longer, so we had 6 minutes and 18 seconds on this to get it to boil, where it was only 4.5 minutes or just under on the larger tuna tin can stove. But when you look at these side by side, this is half the size of that, you know, in height and width, overall bulk. So this will fit into a small Ziploc bag quite easily. It'll give me more space inside my my actual pot, my cookset, and I'm going to weigh it as well, just to see where we are in comparison to the weight of this one, just to see the difference in the weight as well as the size. Okay, it's cooled down enough to just about touch. So this weighs 19 grams. So that was the downfall to the cat can stove, Fancy Feast stove. That weighed 51 grams. So that was actually the heaviest. So the lightest was the Starbucks tin at 22 grams. And this is still 3 grams lighter, even with the insulation. Yes, the boil time is 1.5 minutes longer, but it also continued to burn for double the time. So 4.5 minutes, just over, with the Starbucks as a boil time. That was one of the quickest, with a 6.5 minute boil burn time. And this was 6 minutes and 20 seconds as a boil time, but a total of nearly 13 minutes as a burn time. So that is considerably more efficient than the standard Starbucks stove. So for some time now, this has been my favourite stove for boiling. I've loved it. It's great. You can't simmer with it, but recently I've just been doing boil in the bag foods, dehydrated foods, or just reheated foods from home that I've made. But the downside has been it's been quite bulky. It takes up a lot of space. It's not massively heavy, but 51 grams. This, I think, is going to be my new go-to stove. It works the same as this. I love the way it works. It is so small and compact. It's lovely. It's tiny. It weighs 19 grams. It's next to nothing. Same total burn time as that. Slightly longer on the boil time, but that doesn't bother me. Essentially, it obviously uses the same amount of fuel, but doesn't burn as ferociously as this, which I have noticed when I'm inside the tin. That gives a massive flame off of it. So yeah, I think this is an overall winner. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Just a little bored lockdown video because I've got nothing else to do. Can't go wild camping for a while. So yeah, cat can stove I think still wins the day, but the new version definitely better. If you want to try it at home, give it a go. Simple, quick and easy to make. Costs nothing realistically. Still a bit of loft insulation out of your loft, and away you go. So yeah, if you want to have a go, give it a try, and get out camping. And I'll see you on the next video. Cheers guys, thanks for watching.